we distributed weapons to people. That's how it was. Trucks came and simply distributed weapons to people so that they could defend the capital to ordinary people just on the street, to ordinary people who understood.
Hey guys, it's Sai. If you're super curious but don't always have the time to watch your favourite podcasts, you found the right place. Here's your summary of Lex Fridman number 456, featuring Volodymyr Zelenskyy, the president of Ukraine. In less time than it takes to defend a Russian invasion. Let's jump in. This conversation spanned 3 hours and allowed Lex to dive deep into the mind of President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelenskyy in the midst of war. They discussed the Ukraine war, potential peace with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. This episode starts with an in-depth look at the current crisis in Ukraine, highlighting the geopolitical tensions that have escalated into full-scale war. Zelenskyy describes the unexpected nature of the conflict, stating, "We were not expecting a full-scale invasion, but we were prepared for any scenario."
Well, at that moment, on February 24th, 2022, everything changed again, just like in June 1941. History took a turn. The history of humanity took a turn. And for you too. Well, you were the president. You were talking about fighting corruption, about the country's freedom, about interesting and innovative reforms. But that morning of February 22nd, everything changed. Could you tell me about that morning, the details of your actions, when you had to quickly make difficult decisions? What was the process for you? How did you make these decisions? Did you discuss them with people you trust to understand how to respond to this invasion?
According to our legislation, in principle, I'm the supreme commander of the armed forces of Ukraine, so I had to give corresponding orders. Yes, I have a military office, and then later there was a military headquarters where all key people gathered. This is not only about the military, it's about energy, etc., all key things. But at that moment, I made the decisions quickly and without a doubt. And I cannot say that I am just that kind of person. I'm just a living person who believed that if help is needed right now, to help evacuate people, help with children. Several cities were blocked. I was only thinking about how to deliver food there within a day. We did a lot of things, although we understood that they, in fact, occupy part of our state.
Zelenskyy shares personal anecdotes about the resilience of the Ukrainian people, emphasizing their determination to maintain sovereignty. He explains the strategic importance of certain regions and how the conflict has reshaped Ukraine's international relationships. The conversation also touches on the psychological impact of war on civilians, leaders, and soldiers alike. Zelenskyy's resolve is clear as he mentions, "Every day is a fight for our existence, our culture, and our freedom." Zelenskyy discusses the challenges of leadership during wartime, including the need for swift decision-making and constant adaptation. He explains how he communicates with his citizens and the international community, noting, "Communication is key in times like these. It's about keeping morale high and information flowing." Zelenskyy also touches on the personal sacrifices leaders must make, especially the impact on family life. He credits his family and team's unity for Ukraine's successful defense so far.
This was at 5 in the morning?
No. This was during the first or maybe the second or third day of the war. Yes.
I see.
Well, after that, I went back home. I was home with my children, with my wife. I just went to my wife very quickly that night at 4:00. Yes, and just told her, "Get the children, get ready. You'll probably need to go to my office very soon." And I left. That's it. At this moment, you're no longer a father. What happened to me, unfortunately, not only do I believe, I understand, especially now, that all of this is the most important thing, because your country is your family. The strength is in your family. And this is the most important thing. And I'm the president, and therefore I had to stop being a father in my own family. And my wife had to do everything. She had to do everything regarding children, regarding safety. And I had to deal with the state because I'm the president. And this is my duty. And I, by the way, am taking this very seriously. I went to the office and here we are now. You're very welcome.
The president shares that some days have become more about survival than governance. He speaks of the emotional toll and how he manages to lead with optimism. It's then mentioned that the international support Ukraine has received has been primarily in the form of military aid and economic sanctions against Russia. He appreciates the Western response, but also critiques its pace, saying, "The world's response was necessary, but sometimes it feels like we're in a race against time." The conversation covers specifics like the types of weapons and technology supplied, mentioning drones are a key asset to Ukraine's defense strategy. Zelenskyy discusses the effectiveness of sanctions, their global implications, and potential escalations. He also reflects on the diplomatic efforts, including his calls for more decisive actions from NATO and the EU.
Before this, I must honestly say, everyone said something, predicted something, etc., but I asked only for one thing, primarily from the United States. If you are sure, if you have the evidence, if you talk to him and he tells you that there'll be an invasion, if all this scares you. I only asked for two things. Send us weapons, or better yet, strengthen us with preventive measures so there would be no war. It wasn't the weapons that I was asking for. I asked for sanctions. Intimidate him. Please don't say that. If he comes, if he crosses borders, if he kills, we're imposing sanctions. Well, this is complete bullshit. Sorry, but really,
So they did not help.
I believe that no, and this is a fact. We didn't receive help. If we assume that words are help, well, then yes, we received a lot of it because there were plenty of words. At 4 a.m, there were strikes. Morally, is it possible to prepare for war? No. It doesn't happen like you read in books, see in movies, and so on. What happens to you? I was just looking at my wife and children. My children were asleep, but my wife was awake. There were strikes. Missile strikes, we heard them. To you, as a living person, how can this be? You just can't fully believe this. You just don't understand. Why now? Given everything that happened in World War II when millions of people died, none of it mattered.
The president acknowledges the complexity of international politics, but stresses the moral imperative to act. They also discuss how support has varied across different countries, and for the most part, countries have failed to act. Zelenskyy shares stories from the front lines. He speaks of bravery and loss, recounting, "I've seen heroes, ordinary people who've become extraordinary because they had to. Everything from medical workers under fire, children learning in basements, and soldiers defending their homeland."
We distributed weapons to people. That's how it was. Trucks came and simply distributed weapons to people so that they could defend the capital, to ordinary people, just on the street, to ordinary people who understood that if the Russians entered a city, then we would have the same thing that's happening in other cities. By the way, this is a very sensitive point. How many? How many bomb shelters? How many bomb shelters we built with the partners for the children? And it's a pity that they are underground. But can you imagine their eyes? When they came after COVID, you understand what does it mean, COVID? But they had COVID and the war, and together they didn't see each other for so many years. And when they saw each other, even underground, they were very happy and smiling. So we have such security guarantees. It's not enough to prevent. Yes, preventive measures also work. To prevent the aggression of Putin. To stop.
Your English is better than my Russian. This is wonderful.
I'm not sure.
I'm just giving you compliments.
Thank you. No,
You're supposed
thank
to do
you.
that kind of thing to a president.
Thank you so much.
These stories illustrate the harsh realities but also the indomitable spirit of Ukrainians. Zelenskyy emphasizes the importance of documenting these experiences for history. He also discusses the psychological effects on soldiers and how these people will never be the same, even in the event of peace. Zelenskyy advocates for peace through regional security for Ukraine. Zelenskyy addresses the economic devastation caused by the conflict, detailing the damage to infrastructure, business, and agriculture. He points out, our economy is on life support, and every day we're trying to sustain it amidst the chaos. The discussion includes the loss of jobs, the exodus of people, and the strain on public services. They then talk about potential economic recovery strategies post-war, emphasizing sustainable growth and international investment.
It will be very important for the businesses to return. A lot of support will come, I think, from USA business investment, not as direct aid to us, just to the private sector and resources. And I mentioned this to President Trump and to some European leaders who are our key strategic partners, that will be happy, especially with the Americans, will be happy to sign these contracts and engage in joint investments in many areas. I think we can develop oil, gas, green energy, including solar power. And we already have the resources. We can invest money into this. We have oil reserves in the Black Sea that we can exploit, and we need your expertise and the investment of your companies. We have gold and uranium reserves, the largest in Europe, by the way, which is also very important. For example, Russia has pushed France out of Africa. They urgently need uranium, which we have, so we are ready to open up for investments. This will give us, of course, opportunities, jobs for people, revenue. I don't want cheap labor, honestly. What I truly want, especially after the war, to open up for those people who can really contribute and earn. Yes.
Yeah, give a reason to the 8 million people to come back.
Yes. It's so important. And they will come, and we will recover and rebuild Ukraine. We will be very open to companies. And of course, we will welcome our people back. It's so important culturally. I think the most important thing is to remain open and not change our direction. Because culturally, aligning with Russia, it's one idea, while aligning with Europe is another. Our people have chosen Europe. It's their choice. It's our choice, the choice of our nation. And I think it's very important.
But first, you have to end the war.
Yes, you're right. And we will.
Zelenskyy also talks about reconstruction plans, international aid, and the role of local innovation in rebuilding efforts. Lex and Zelenskyy delve into the role of media in shaping public perception of the war. Zelenskyy discusses how propaganda has been weaponized, stating, information warfare is as critical as the physical one. He explains the challenges in countering Russian narratives both domestically and internationally. Examples include misinformation campaigns, cyber attacks on media outlets, and the importance of maintaining open channels of communication. Zelenskyy also shares how his government has utilized social media to bypass traditional media blockades. Zelenskyy shares that his background in entertainment has influenced his approach to leadership.
Per the information we received. Thanks to digitalization, by the way, we had very good digitalization before this. We preserved a lot. And even when they were surrounding certain cities, a lot of things still worked. The banking system, the internet, we had television. And thanks to this, I made several decisions to ensure that people are united and have all the information. Russia is very good at spreading large-scale disinformation. Fortunately, I have 2 decades of experience, managing a production studio, TV channels, and large media resources. I understood that we needed to build an information network very quickly. Thanks to this, I began to address the people constantly. This happened several times, 3 to 5 times a day. In fact, I became an information source for people who were in cities that were cut off from other information. And it was very important for me to keep all things digital, to keep the internet, to stay in touch with everyone. We also built a media platform where we had all the news agencies of Ukraine. And this network was called Marathon. And it was also very important for the people to trust us. And people had to receive information. Why? There were waves. There were waves of Russian on the first day who said he ran away. I had to go out into the street. I left the office and went outside. I had to do this because I was showing that this was no green screen, to show that it was the street, not some digital manipulation. And then I spoke to the Russians. I addressed Russians. I really did. And I spoke to them. And I spoke to them and spoke in Russian. I told them, you must stop Putin. This is terrible. This is horror. This is war. You must stop him. And if you stand up now, if you speak out, and if you go out into the streets, this was very important. I spoke to them in Russian to show them that there was no problem and that all of these pretexts were made up.
The conversation tackles the balance between security and freedom of speech, and how Ukraine manages this during wartime. He stresses the importance of truth in media to foster trust and solidarity. Zelenskyy expresses a deep understanding of Putin's fear for Donald Trump. When he talks with Donald Trump, all European leaders are eager to ask how their conversations went. He says, this has never happened before. Zelenskyy talks about Trump's influence on political dynamics in and outside of the United States, specifically global geopolitics. Everyone in the world has eyes on Trump.
What do you admire? What do you respect about Donald Trump? And also maybe why do you think he won overwhelmingly the election in 2024, that American people chose him?
He was stronger. He was much more stronger than Kamala Harris, Biden first, and then Kamala Harris, yes? He showed that he can intellectually and physically. It was an important point to show that if you want to have a strong country, you have to be strong. And he was strong. And this number of rallies, what I said, is not a simple thing. He showed that he can. He is strong. So he doesn't have any questions with this age and etc. Nothing. He is young. He is young here and his brains work. So I think it's important, very important. There's something we need. I think that President Trump not only has will, he has all these possibilities, and it's not just talk. I really count on him, and I think that our people really count on him. So he has enough power to pressure him, to pressure Putin not into wanting to stop it. No, he will not want to pressure him to actually stop it. That is the difference. Don't rely on his will, Putin's will to stop. You won't see it. That's what I think.
I do have what some might call a naive dream of you sitting down with Putin and Trump and negotiating a deal about a ceasefire and together finding a path to long-term peace. And I think this requires strength, requires negotiations. There are a lot of carrots and sticks here that can be used to make a real deal. And Trump is very keen on making a deal and ready to negotiate.
They also explore how a strong leader is a key factor in strengthening national resolve and unity. Zelenskyy mentions his long-term vision for cultural restoration and the role of international cultural diplomacy for the Ukrainian people, especially with regards to the United States and their people. Looking beyond the conflict, Zelenskyy shares his vision for Ukraine integrating into Europe and the implications it has on global peace. He envisions a Ukraine that is strong, democratic, and a beacon of resilience. Lex and Zelenskyy dive deep into political reforms and anti-corruption measures taken by Ukraine during the time of war. He also reflects on the role of youth in rebuilding the nation, mentioning it will take generations for understanding and the idea of idyllic peace is only a dream. Time will tell, it always does.
Let me ask you a question.
What do you think? Will there ever be a day when the Ukrainian people forgive the Russian people and both peoples will travel back and forth again and marry each other, rekindle and form friendships? Will there be such a time in the future?
I think history has long answered this question. I don't know how it will be for us. It will be in the future. Without a doubt, history has shown this time. And again, after every devastating war, one generation, one country recognizes that it was an aggressor, and it comes to realize this is impossible to forgive. This is precisely the kind of education they've had in Germany for many years, even though these children had nothing to do with it. It was their grandfathers who participated, and not all of them were participants of Nazi Germany's war essentially against the world. Yes. And against life. And therefore, they're still apologizing. Apologizing is not easy. They know that they were the aggressors. They were guilty. They do not look for compromise. Compromise in itself buys time. And they understand this. There are convicted murderers, condemned both historically and by their own people. Reparations have been paid, and security guarantees have been established, by the way, and all this is done. And when all this is done and recognized, in any case, people develop relations with each other. That's clear, but it can only happen. The way it always has, Russia will have to apologize. It will. This will happen because they are guilty. They are guilty. And as I told you, the guilty are different. Both those who participated and those who remain silent, because silence is also about participating, in my opinion.
Peace negotiations between Russia, Ukraine, and the United States are the only way forward in his eyes. Zelenskyy shares personal reflections on his journey and the gravity of his role. He admits, "Every day I pray for peace, not just for Ukraine, but for the world." His personal stories of meeting survivors, families, and soldiers give listeners a more intimate view of leadership. He speaks about the emotional challenges, the support from his family, and how he finds moments of peace. Zelenskyy also discusses his plans for after the war, focusing on healing and national reconciliation.
We want peace, I mean, just to make it clear, we want peace. Just what I always say. You have to come to Ukraine and see for yourself, and people will tell you, no, we can't forgive those murderers who took our lives, but we still want to make peace. And honestly, I think that the highest approval rating of the President of the United States, of Trump, now is in Ukraine. People really believe that he can truly help bring peace. Now they have faith that he can make it happen, that he can support Ukraine, and he can stop Putin, and that he will make sure Putin doesn't get everything he wants. This is very important, and it's why we believe that we must not lose this opportunity.
I hope you find the path to peace. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for talking
Thank you for
today.
coming.
Спасибо. Дякую. Я забыл.
Дякую. Yeah.
The episode concludes with a message of hope, resilience, and the universal human desire for peace. Encapsulated in Zelensky's words, "We will rebuild, we will heal, and we will remember." And that's that. In this powerful episode of Lex Fridman's podcast, Volodymyr Zelenskyy provides a rare window into the complexities of leading a nation at war. His insights span from the immediate tactical responses to the war to the long-term dreams for Ukraine's future. This conversation captures the essence of his leadership, the human stories he champions, and the cultural and economic battles being fought alongside the military ones. Zelenskyy's candidness and vision leave listeners with not only a better understanding of the current crisis, but also a sense of hope for what lies beyond the conflict. Peace is always worth fighting for. If you learned something new and want to spread some love, we would really appreciate if you hit the bell icon to get a head start on new episodes uploaded every other day. Remember, this is just a snapshot. For the full experience, watch the original podcast. If you want to stay updated, head on over to X and give us a follow at solutionsAI_. All links are super easy to find down in the description and pinned to the top comment. We'd love if you share our stuff with your friends and family too. And most importantly, be sure to stay curious. See you next time. Sai out.
my French press. Light an L to a